Today we're going to talk about ecosystems and nutrient cycling, which is our second part of 4.1 in Biology Unit 4. We'll start with ecosystem and what the definition of an ecosystem is. An ecosystem is basically a community interacting with their abiotic environment. So, a community, which is a group of populations living in the same area. Populations are a group of the same species. So we have communities interacting with the abiotic environment. The abiotic environment means all of those things that are non-living, such as the temperature of the environment, perhaps the soil quality, wind, humidity, all of those things. And these two things interacting with each other form an ecosystem. In ecosystems, there are two really important facts. Number one, energy has to be constantly supplied. So, energy has to be supplied. However, nutrients will be cycled. What does this mean? This basically means that although energy will have to constantly be coming into the ecosystem, usually in the form of sunlight, nutrients will be used and will not leave or enter the ecosystem. So, for example, you've heard about the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, all of those things. We're cycling nutrients throughout the ecosystem. The cycle usually goes like this. Nutrients in the abiotic environment, so like minerals in the soil, will be transferred to nutrients in an organism, and then eventually transfer back to nutrients in the abiotic environment. For example, if we have a plant here, this is not a nice plant. This plant is going to take nutrients from the soil, and the soil is the abiotic environment. These nutrients are not organic. They are part of the non-living environment. And then once these nutrients are taking up the plant may be eaten by another organism. And then this organism will be eaten by another organism. And when an organism dies, so like a cat might die, then this organism is then decomposed by decomposers, and decomposers return the nutrients that the cat had taken from the plant and the plant had taken from the soil back to the soil. Thus, it's all just a cycle, so you can see. Now, the IB also wants you to know about something called Mesocosms. And Mesocosms are just a system to examine an environment under controlled conditions. Mesocosms can either be terrestrial or aquatic. Terrestrial, sorry. And these are the main types of mesocosms. Why do we make mesocosms? Well, it's to understand how a certain variable may affect a system. So, let's say you have something like a terrarium. And the important thing about mesocosms is that nutrients don't matter, basically. That matter doesn't leave the mesocosm. That way we can study how it's cycled through. So we can check how an increase in temperature, for example, may affect the rate of growth of grass. Or we can check how an increase in temperature may affect the rate of photosynthesis by adding some carbon dioxide sensors in there or some oxygen sensors. We can also change light amount, concentration of nutrients in the soil. We can change many things. It can be used for IAs. It's a really good idea, but you have to make sure that you go and read the IB animal experimentation policy and that your experiment goes according to that. That's basically all that 4.1 is. When conducting an experiment with a mesocosm, one has to make sure that energy is supplied, just like in a normal ecosystem, and that the system is safe and will not cause stress or harm to the organisms inside. Therefore, one must make sure that the organisms will get oxygen for respiration, and that, for example, in an aquatic system, that water circulation is there so the water doesn't become stagnant. Those two things are really important to consider, so your organism doesn't die.